Hi, this is Angela, and today I'm sharing about the meaning behind one of the songs from my teacher Adnan Sarhan from the Sufi movement work. And the title of the song, which was sung with Adnan and the singers, he calls them the singers, so it's a choral song, is called Come Back to Me. And the meaning that I experienced in the song was, how do you come back to spirit or the divine? The divine is within us, but we don't really live that in every second. We don't hear how the divine is communicating with us in every moment. And one of the most important things with Adnan that we explored was the moment in the dance. Experiencing the full moment in every movement that we were doing. So the movements are very simple, and I'll be sharing those movements in the classes starting next year, 2024, February 1st at Amira's Palace, Marrickville, 6:30 p.m. And I'll put the link in the description later in the comments. So I wanted to look at this point where we come back to spirit, or that inner voice within us. Some people don't know what spirit is, but they know that inner voice within. It's that voice that prompts you at certain points to not do something or to do something. And last week I was looking at the promptings I had to go to the Sufi classes in the first place were very innocent. I thought I was going to a yoga class, and it ended up being a Sufi class. There's this other part of us that's always communicating with us, which is your inner voice, and I call it spirit, that's always saying, come back to your spirit. So in Adnan's song, they're singing over and over, come back to me, come back to me. And it's a little bit like some of the chanting that we used to do as well. When we breathe in and come back to the breath, or we repeat some of the chants, we're coming back to the nature of our bodies, the nature of the creation, and the nature of life itself. One of the chants that we used to do was the who sound, which was the sound of the world rotating. So as we all together in a group would say the who sound, we could feel collectively that connection of the human species, or the humans in that room, to the rotation of the earth itself. And the Sufis, with their whirling as well, mimic that rotation of the earth on that axis that the planet rotates on, which also, if you think about the solar system, is in a circuit around the sun. So there's many ways where the whirling represents many rotations in the galaxy and the solar system and the universe. So when we come back to ourselves, we're also experiencing that sense of coming away and coming back, coming away from the self and coming back, coming away from the self and coming back. And for me, later in the belly dance, I explored the circle, not just through circular movements, but the circle of how you might experience the dance in a space, some of the circles of the joints of the body, and some of the shapes of circles and figure eights that you move. And they keep us connected to that sense of coming back and coming away. So come back to me is, how do we listen to those inner voices? And some of the inner voices especially for me when I started the movement meditation work with Sufi dance and other meditative movement, some of the voices I heard were not pleasant. So that experience of the inner voice, some people, when they start to listen to the inner voices, what they hear is the monkey mind, or they might hear emotions which come from that feeling of loss or separation. Certainly in the Sufi music, all over the Sufi genres of songs, you can hear that sense of longing, that sense of separation and desire to come back to that sense of connection. So it's often been discussed that separation is an important experience so we can have that feeling of coming back. And the emotions that we have of loss, loneliness, separation are also important experiences to know what it's like to be away from that sense of at oneness and being at one. What I also feel is that sense of the emotions gives us that longing to be connected, which drives us to the spiritual path, drives us to listen to the inner voices and hear those voices within versus hearing the noise outside. And a lot of us might be experiencing loneliness or sadness or separation at this time. So that is a prompting from your own spirit to come back, to hear the voices within you. And so sometimes what happens in meditation is that people hear the monkey mind or they feel emotions and they run away. And that's fine, because your spirit is always calling you to come back to you, to come back to your spirit. So for me, underneath the monkey mind and the feelings of separation or other emotions, there was this other yearning for at one-ment, feeling that oneness with all life. And it happens in most meditation practices. Certainly in movement meditation, it happens almost when you're in the movement itself. You can feel everything moving together and having this great synchronicity and feeling the space between the sounds of the music almost as if it's as part of your body and moving your body, and your body's moving with the music. So everything can feel really at one in dance and in meditative movement and Sufi movement. You can feel your inner self, that at one-ment, expand into the space around you. And so when we sing about coming back to me, it's really about that. And I encourage you, if you're doing any meditation, or if you're feeling lonely, or if you're hearing a lot of noise inside of you, don't be dissuaded by that or think you're doing something wrong. It's literally just the human condition. And it's like a challenge in a way, where you're going to hear those discordant parts of yourself in order to find that circular pattern of coming back to the self. It's a part of feeling separate, and the other part of being separate is feeling at one, and it's a part of the experience of the human condition and experience at this time that we will feel separate. And it's not a bad thing, it's just what is. For me, in the dance and the Sufi movement, what we're doing is simply experiencing how through the movement and through repetitive movement, you can feel and hear more loudly that inner self, and you can expand it into the space around you, so it becomes much more embodied and much more physical, and also really easy to feel in our periphery, in our the space outside of the physical body. And there, when we in the Sufi movement classes start to practice that repetition of feeling that spiritual self expand in the space, there we can start to hear the inner voices that are connected to love and that deep sense of being connected to a deeper part of yourself that is always there, always ongoing, always in process, always in motion, because all of us on the planet are in motion just by being on this planet, and the planet's rotation also being in the rotation of its orbit in space. We're all in motion. We get stuck because we think we're just in this moment of perhaps separation or hearing things that may feel uncomfortable. So in the Sufi movement, we've discovered how in each moment you can connect back to your own natural energy, which is always connected and always there underneath the noise of the monkey mind or the emotions which might be unpleasant. And then after a while, what happens is the unpleasant emotions are able to be held much more by that profound space that you start to experience of your own spiritual self, which has no boundaries, but we don't really know what it is. It just starts to expand more and it starts to be more clear. And that's how, in my experience, we can hear that voice within more clearly when we start to experience it. Some of you, it may be yoga, it might be meditation, it might be being in nature. Those practices were practiced for thousands of years for very important reasons. So if you are interested in the Sufi work, it's a part of a body of work that comes from several countries, but it's always connected to that sense of the center, being in connection to the whole of life that rotates throughout this planet and throughout yourself, throughout the central axis that's constantly in motion. And I can share more about that in the Sufi classes in Sydney, which I'll be starting February 1st, 2024. We also have online classes for private sessions or for groups. So you can contact me, Angela, at Dance with Angela. And over the December period, I'll be sharing a few more videos about the Sufi songs from Adnan and how I've experienced them as revealing the teachings about spirit and how spirit lives in us. And then in January, I'm going to be looking at the new energy that we are calling in for not just 2024, but for oneness. How is humanity able to move with this collection of different countries? So in January, I'll be sharing on the world dance healing classes and what I've learned from the different world dances and how we all are connected through this body and how each world dance can expand on the power of this body, this gift of this body, and how we also can get healing for the body through the different world dances, through listening to deeper layers of the body. So stay in touch. I'll be doing the lives pre-recorded as we go into December and January. And you can always reach me at Angela at Dance with Angela, and have a blessed week. Thank you.